Hello, and welcome to Around the Verse, our weekly look at Star Citizen's development. I'm Sean Tracy.
And I'm Josh Herman. In this episode, we have a ship shape focused on Aegis Eclipse, the newly declassified stealth bomber unveiled by the UEE last week.
Ooh. But before that, let's go to Frankfurt for a studio update.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Chambers, and I'm the development director of Frankfurt office of Foundry 42. This past month, the team welcomed a few new members, bringing us up to a total of now 74 employees. We routinely have visitors to the office, and this month was no exception, with people here from both our US and UK offices. Most of the senior production staff from across all the offices came together in one place for their annual summit, had some intensive meetings, and discussed both ongoing and upcoming plans. And we found that a few days face-to-face without distraction can actually go a long way. So let's kick off this month with checking in with the AI team. The AI team has worked on numerous items over the past few weeks, and I'll just mention a few and show you a few things. They started a sprint focused on human combat, with the end goal of improving all the combat work done in the previous months into something that represents our final quality. They're initially focusing on all the shooting functionalities, making sure the basic controls for accuracy and friendly fire are implemented correctly. They're also diving into improving the behaviors related to the first initial reactions of something non-friendly seen or heard from a wide range of distances. They also finished converting the ship AI to a newer, updated version, meaning that weapons, shields, and countermeasures now work with the new SC Item 2.0 system. For now, it also supports the old ships to avoid any compatibility issues that may creep up. This is part of an ongoing effort to move ships away from Kythera AI control and brings us one step closer to fully switching to subsumption-based AI for all the ships. Both ship and vehicle seats can be controlled by either players, NPCs, or an AI module. The past month, the AI team did some work on the AI modules. The AI module represents an item that can be attached to a seat, any seat of a spaceship or a turret, and execute a behavior logic defined with the subsumption editor. You might think of it as a piece of custom software that can be instructed to take control of the same items that are available to the player sitting in the same seat. It might work, for example, as an autopilot or autonomously take control of a turret and fire at an enemy target. This feature is crucial in multi-crew ships where the pilot might assign specific activities to the AI modules instead of another player or NPC. The system design guys have been pushing forward with the air traffic control system, adding conversations with the traffic controller, and a smart system for allocating landing pads for pilots wanting to land or take off. They also updated all doors to version 2.0, which now makes them modular and a lot easier to implement. Each door having switchable loadouts, ability to connect two rooms so air can travel between them, and generally a lot more functionality needed for new systems that are already in the works, such as breaching and hacking. They also started reworking airlocks so they can work better with the room and atmospheric systems. They did some rough prototyping work on dynamic advertising, which will contextually fill in the in-game panels and screens throughout stations with content that's reflecting the interests of the player that enters its proximity. The same system could be used for showing large-scale broadcasts and warnings throughout the universe based on what's happening in the game at that specific moment, either globally or locally. Our lead lighting artist, Chris, has been continuing work on the surface outposts, particularly on the habitation sets, as well as keeping in sync with the UK environment art team with all their updates to assets and dressing. One issue lighting has been trying to solve for 3.0 is how to improve the amount of visibility on the dark side of moons. Previously, without any interest objects in the sky, relying solely on cube maps would mean that the planet's surface would be visibly too dark, and the player really wouldn't be able to see any detail in the environment around them. So Chris worked with the engineers to add another layer of atmospheric glow and irradiance. The glow allows us to brighten the atmosphere, given a nice gradient that shows the shape of the horizon and gives some depth in front of the player. And the radiance gives us a base level of brightness on the actual surface geometry, so the player can faintly see themselves as well as the surface around them. Finally, he's also been providing support for S42 environment lighting and helping set visual benchmarks for each of the levels. The engine team recently implemented the initial version of our new I/O scheduler. This system will improve streaming performance as textures, meshes, sounds, etc. are constantly being streamed in and evicted based on what's being used to stay within a certain memory budget. Eventually, it'll also allow the job manager to better utilize CPU cores in cases where streaming jobs are waiting for I/O. Moreover, it lays the groundwork for a version of the scheduler specifically designed for SSD drives to exploit their superior random disk access properties that will allow for multiple concurrent data streams with high throughput. All in all, this ensures all data is available in time for complex scenes to render without having to wait for LODs and all the related artifacts. Meanwhile, the incremental patcher moved into an internal phase of QA testing. As previously discussed, the system is designed to deliver builds incrementally to devs and gamers alike. So every time you update the game, you'll only need to download what has actually changed or been added since the last time. And this update process will therefore be a lot faster. We also revived our internal memory analysis tool for Linux called Memory Play. This was to help us find out and fix memory leaks on server instances much faster. Memory leaks are one of the contributing factors for server stability, and we want fixed as quick as possible to make sure our servers can run for a long time without any issues. On the rendering side, several improvements have been made to the atmosphere and night skies, as I mentioned in the lighting update. The night side of the planets and moons now exhibit more details due to in-scattered moonlight and a visible sky gradient in the distance when close to the terrain's surface. We're also looking into additional improvements for stronger ground-based haze to further increase visual cues for scene readability and to make our lighting artists happy. They also continued working on the object container streaming, SolEd, as well as PlanEd, and rewrite of the living entity code, as previously mentioned, is on track. The environment art team continue to work on the Levski exterior in combination with the level designers. Both art and design regularly work closely together to verify that the art that's being created is made in a way that doesn't break any portion of the design. The last layout changes for Levski are coming in, and the set dressing pass is close to being complete. The area around Levski is also being populated with slightly larger mining structures than what we previously had. Since the Levski exterior has grown a lot over the past few weeks, it's also going through an optimization pass, with the artist looking into reducing memory consumption wherever applicable and making each individual asset as efficient as possible. The terrain of Delamar is getting polished up, and both the assets and rocks are all being finalized. We're also setting up the specific asset scattering presets for the different ecosystems to populate the asteroids with defined objects. The Planet Tech has gotten a couple of new features recently. The overall amount of materials that can be used on the terrain has increased significantly. Therefore, New materials are being created for the moons to make the surfaces even more diverse from one another. Along with that, the moons also got a performance boost by optimizing which assets are being drawn on the surface of the procedural entities at any given time. The tech art team worked on multiple mannequin tasks, including animations for both usables and the cinematics team. Mannequin is a tool within Lumberyard that allows us to construct complex interactive character animations fairly easy. They also refined some of the earlier shown pipeline tools by adding new features and fixing bugs to make them easier to use and more dependable. They did a handful of additional things, such as prototyping Vandal weapon, some physical simulation R&D for weapons, and bug fixes, to name a few. The VFX team in Frankfurt has been continuing to work on particles for the planet effects. One of the new features we recently implemented are animated decals. This now allows us to project certain animated textures on objects, so it'll follow the contours of those objects instead of having them on a flat plane that is roughly aligned to the surface. This helps to integrate certain effects into the world a lot more efficiently and with much better results than what we could do previously. The VFX team in Frankfurt also grew by one member this month. He'll primarily be focused on the large amount of cinematics work that needs to be done for Squadron 42, including soft and rigid body simulations, as well as destruction, particle effects, and the scene setups to go along with those. The QA team this month grew by one member, John Lang. He got up to speed fast and soon became a primary point of contact for any game dev client issues in Frankfurt, ensuring that he knows the current state of game dev at any given time. He's also been heavily involved in various system testing this month, such as the new stamina system currently being worked on in both Frankfurt and UK offices. Together with Glenn Neal, they were able to begin the initial testing pass in an effort to gather data for our game programmers to use for bug fixes and overall improvements to the system. QA team's also been working on testing the patcher itself, the editor, server connections, and the Star Citizen client using the new pack system in order to catch crashes and differences between builds pulled with the old patcher versus the new patcher. It's an ongoing test that they perform daily to stay on top of any potential issues that arise from build to build. Additionally, they also spend time testing various multiplayer issues for the Stanton system, which included moon collision testing. They work extremely close with the engineers and test very specific things in a very specific way to get the data that the engineers are after. The engineers then take those findings to work out fixes for issues and to also improve things such as stability and potential memory issue. This month, the FPS weapons team was primarily focused on R&D efforts for weapon skins. They spent time prototyping camouflage patterns, decals, and material variations. This will set us up for future weapon customization and allow us to quickly and easily create special one-off variants when we want. The ship weapons artists are currently working on the Preacher Armament Distortion Scattergun, S1 to S3, and started work on the Apocalypse Arms Ballistic Scattergun, S1 to S3. This past month, the cinematics team focused on Previs pipeline with the goal of getting most of the cinematics into the game regardless of their current state, either polished or rough. This will help designers and directors alike get a better idea of the overall flow and pacing for the full playthrough of Squadron 42. Within the next few weeks, they'll be working closely with facial and audio team to get a full representation of performances working in engine. They also spent some time getting a small motion capture system set up in one of our common areas with help from Kyle Moody from the UK. For those that don't know, motion capture, or mocap, allows us to capture an actor's motions and map them to a digital character. It's a way for us to quickly generate a base animation for the animators to then modify if they need. We set up 11 OptiTrack cameras in total, which gave us a small capture volume of roughly 3 meters squared. The cinematics team will primarily use it to capture background characters for individual scenes, as well as transition animations to help link animations that are not quite aligning. It can also be used to capture quick animations that we can use for outstanding R&D tasks from our animation engineers and save the animators some time. The system won't be set up permanently, but once we have a small list of animations that we want, the team can set it up in about an hour and quickly get what we need. The game programming team in Frankfurt has grown over the past few months. The team is currently at 3 people with 1 lead and 2 regulars. This month, they did a pass on improving the functionality of doors, then started working on airlocks. Both the doors and airlocks need to be set up as simplified as much as possible and integrated with the latest changes of Item 2.0 system. They also added a few small features to the weapons, such as the ability to have different muzzle flash effects or different vent effects based on the current fire mode, as well as fixed numerous bugs. They also started planning the work needed for the improved weapon system. This new system is based on the Item 2.0 system and will allow the designers to create a wider variety of weapons more easily. It'll also address technical issues such as client-side prediction and server authority. It's still in the research phase, and it is a long-term effort. However, we're confident that we're on the right track and implementation can begin within the next few weeks. So that wraps it up for Frankfurt this month. Appreciate all the support. You enable us to do what we love to do. And I will be back next month with another update. See you in the verse.
A lot of interesting stuff in that update. Imagine being stuck on the dark side of a moon when they didn't add that atmospheric glow. It might be pretty realistic, but not very good for visibility.
Yeah, and that's a good example of how game design works. We figure out a way for one sun to light an entire system, only to create this new problem. So considering how the environment and art teams work, to make this game look beautiful, it would be a shame if you couldn't see any of the textures in the dark.
Yeah, exactly. But let's talk about something that's supposed to be hard to see. The Aegis Eclipse. This new stealth bomber has several great features, including different wing positions for atmospheric and spaceflight.
Here's a ship shape for more details on this exciting new ship.
My name's Paul Jones. I'm one of the art directors here at Foundry 42.
I'm Jeff from Tech Design, technical designer that made the Eclipse, or made the spec for the Eclipse.
Aegis is meant to be one of the older companies, sort of lore, basically. Generally sort of long sweeping lines, quite clean sort of body, always well thought out, not greebly, it's not industrial. There's a certain level of clean industrial design that have gone into these.
The Eclipse was the first chip I got to actually create in tech design. So I've been in tech design for about a year now, and I've picked up a lot of other people's chips like the Argo and the Idris. But this was the first chip I was given the design brief of. We want to make a stealth bomber. It needs to have echoes of other ships like the B-2 bomber. And then I just got to to run with it.
Most people have a certain idea in their head of what a stealth bomber is, and we haven't really strayed far from that. That's always the sort of way in Star Citizen. You often deal with things that people are familiar with, and then you advance it, basically. Originally sort of started with the Avenger sort of sweeping lines, basically, and then as we've developed, we kind of shifted away from that and went more towards a sort of saber styling, basically.
Initially, I kind of envisaged it being a descendant of the Avenger. So it would have lots of the similar tellings, the Avenger, the smooth shape, the long profile. But as the ship design went along, the ship became a bit more angular, much like the likes of the Sabre. In the concept process, we're starting with, we start with a rough shape. We then started pushing towards saber styling.
And then it was, it's always really about that top profile, that sort of delta cockpits, and then your intakes. And so we started off with the traditional 2 intakes. And then we sort of decided to sort of bisect them and then have 2 intakes on the top, 2 intakes on the bottom, see what that does. And then I was like, okay, I don't like that, so let's try 4 on the top, which make a real sort of striking feature of the ship. And then that was pretty much it. That was it. That was kind of like, okay, that's the one we're going for, because this is meant to be stealth bomber of the future. Kind of sort of felt it worked better to sort of push in that direction.
So this, even more so than the Sabre, is going to be a very stealthy vessel, but unlike the Sabre, it's no dogfighter.
We stuck fairly close to the brief, and we gave Chris his options of slightly wilder ones, ones that were sort of entering probably more into Batman territory maybe. Basically Chris was like, oh no, like this one. From there off we go. Basically it's how can we take something familiar, how can we advance it but still keep it recognisable.
The Eclipse is it's very much a military ship. I was looking at a lot of the stealth fighters, obviously, that exist. The B-2 was a very heavy inspiration for the design of this ship. Just looking at the ship from the front, you have this clean profile where you've got the wings and it just kind of bulbs out of the body a bit. And that's kind of what I wanted to echo with the Eclipse, because having it loaded with loads of bombs and loads of guns dangling off it all over the place, it wouldn't look stealthy, and in a way that minimalist design is kind of menacing. You'll see the shape coming and you'll know immediately what it is. Currently the way stealth works is your ship has a cross section, and that's kind of how easy you are to detect, and basically, a lot of that's radar. One of the guys in QA actually used to play with the Hornet Ghost, where you could turn off load of your systems, like your engines, and you could turn off your shield generators, and it reduces loads of your signatures so much that you can only detect it when you're looking basically directly at it. And that was one of his favourite strategies in Arena Commander, and that's kind of the sort of thing I was kind of thinking of with the Eclipse, is when you're flying towards a target, if you know roughly where they are, you fly towards them and you go dark a bit. You'll turn off any systems you don't need right now, and then when you get closer, light everything up and try and get them.
We've got a bomb bay that holds 3 torpedoes.
They're size 9s, the same as the Retaliator. And while a lot of the space in the interior of the Retaliator's occupied with its torpedo bays, in the Eclipse we had to kind of tone it down a bit, keep it a lot more compact. So we've created a new torpedo firing mechanism, basically, which is just like a tube inside the ship, which will have 3 torpedoes inside it, and it'll fire 1 torpedo and then rotate, and you can fire another one.
And then sort of also featuring in sort of functionality added to the ship partway through the process. So it's got multiple configurations, basically, of the wings.
When the ship is in atmosphere, the wings actually sort of fold back a bit, and when it's in atmosphere, they'll fold out fully, so it's got the full flat profile. And it's got a handful of little fins on the nose and towards the back, and they'll be popping out, basically, to give the guys that it flies better in atmosphere. And if we can, we'll definitely be giving it that kind of profile and update. But in space, all this stuff's going to pop back in, and the wing's going to tuck back a little bit. And which should make its profile just slightly smaller, so it'll be slightly harder to shoot, slightly harder to detect,
And then the other defining feature was basically its landing state. So it's a very, it's quite a wide ship, and so it wasn't going to work for a lot of landing areas. And so this basically kind of riffs off a lot of what the military do anyway on like aircraft carriers. So we've got folding wings. It isn't, it isn't quite, they don't fold over as far as military. We've gone for a very certain sort of graphic style, cuts a very noticeable sort of silhouette. And then the landing gear is sort of part of the folded wings.
It's one of those that it's going to have a niche. It's definitely not going to be, you're not gonna have it like a Hornet and take it basically anywhere and see what you can do. If you take this off fighting regular pirates near a station, you're wasting your time, because those size 9 torpedoes are going to take forever and a day to hit. They're going to take forever to lock on. You've only got 2 size 2 guns, and this ship doesn't. It can dogfight at a pinch, but it's no dogfighter. It's one of the key things I kind of wanted to stress, is it's kind of not so much ponderous, but definitely it's not agile. But then if you do know where a big target is, if you can get a Constellation on its own, you can kill it.
It's going to be a really cool ship to watch, sort of just come in and then wings fold up and then it's sit on the ground, so it looks really intimidating, which is kind of what we were driving for. And what you want as a stealth bomber, isn't it? You want something that's going to cause trouble and look like it too.
Great work, guys. If you want to add this stealth ship to your fleet, the Aegis Eclipse is on sale until Friday, June 2nd.
And subscribers can also learn more about the Aegis Eclipse by checking out the latest edition of Jump Point and visiting the vault for some concept images.
Awesome. We also answered some questions about the Eclipse earlier this week, so check out the ship Q&A for more information.
So that's it for this episode of ATV. A big thanks to all of our backers for your support. We couldn't build a game like this without you.
And thanks for watching. We'll see you around the verse.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in the Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.